There we go. Okay. Hey, it's Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and I've got Tar from Sweden, and we are going to talk about language and just, some other stuff today. And so this is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes for Think Collaborative. And so, yeah, we haven't done anything for a while, and my life has been super hectic. So, anyway, so here we are. All right. And so we're going to talk about language. Before we got on, we were talking about kind of like historical goat stuff, and then also some Naga stuff, some snake stuff. So we're all revved up.
And I have a lead in for the time of the year we are currently. Actually, we will have the Orthodox New Year quite this or the other day in Russia. And New Year in the Christian calendar is positioned exactly 1 week after Christmas Day. And Christmas Day is somewhat a lead up. I would like to circle in talking about different ancient traditions that still is very visible in our today cultures. So that's something I offered you here. So this will be kind of things. The Naga is interesting, as you said, and you explained to me Naga was from India, the Indian culture, Hindu culture about the snake. And I would reference in language, the words tell a secret or logic interesting story of the parts of a word. So Naga would be kind of two parts, the na and the ga. And if you would switch the logic of na, it would be an. Na would be an, and we have different variations of our vowels, how we pronounce them, of course. So na, in my logic, I clearly see, at least in our languages, will be away from, and on or an would be to. That would be motion towards. Na would be motion or activity or logic pointing away from. And ga would be very close to go in English language. So go and ga is kind of the activity of walking or go. That's also action activity. So a snake as naga, go away from it, keep away from it. So we have similar things in Sweden. In Swedish folklore, sometimes the devil is called the na-ek, and he would always be positioned in the middle of a stream, a water stream, and all the children would be always carefully warned against him. And since na-ek is also not crossover, is actually a taboo about being naked, and actually in English you have very close to our language in this respect. Naked and neck, as we would say in our language, is quite close, and to be naked would be not acceptable to cross that line. It would be kind of natural taboo. So this man sitting in the stream, water stream, would be playing fiddle and be naked. Everyone believes that neck means the naked man fiddling or the devil boy, because in ancient traditions of Scandinavia, we have really long traditions with music, and a fiddle is kind of a sacred instrument. So this is the nowadays religious leaders or time leaders try to get away some competition. This is pretty much what you said, but from a different culture. I will pass this on to you. So the na-ek would actually means go away from, cross. Ek is like X or a crossing. So ek would be actually the word for a spoke in Swedish. So a wheel, a circle here with into the center would have eker, spokes. So that's kind of things binding, or it's a path. It's something. So it's on the path. And if you need to go over actually a lake, in our language, we will have a ek a physical things to cross over the lake would be the little boat, you row it to go over to the other side. So ek is kind of simple to understand. If you take comparison of lots of words to see this logical structure. And neck would be go away from this place, don't cross over. They teach the childrens with the old story about this naked man. That's just a word likening to neck or naek. Don't cross over here. Here you can die. Here the water here is very dangerous. So these stories tellings will be like folklore or mythology, or this necken naek person symbolizing be careful here would be kind of spoken into storytelling. Now for you. I cannot hear you.
I liked your story about the goat, the Christmas goat. That was a good
Yes,
story.
we didn't tell that yet. Do you want me to go to that story first, or
Yeah,
would you like to?
tell us the Capricorn Christmas goat story.
Okay, I would flag this as most likely there are no one really connecting some obvious clues. I follow Dennis Fetcher a lot, and he has read lots of the ancient wisdom traditions. You can find it in old writings, and there is mentioned in the ancient wisdom traditions they would have acroamatic ciphers. That would be a story dressed up to portray a very important concept and to leave it on. And if you can sit and logically connect a lot of tie-ins for something like this achromatic cipher, it will open himself just from logic, just from studying it, investigating it. So I have been engaged for some 10-15 years in guiding and researching, visiting prehistoric heritage sites in Scandinavia. And that would be erected stones or stone mounds, earth mounds, petroglyphs, and other such things. And during the time, well, the start for it was I became invited to do some guided tours for amateur archaeoastronomical researcher for the Nordic most visited historic site. It's called Al's Stone. It's a magnificent, gigantic stone ship depicted by erected stones in the shape of a ship. It actually faces the highest leader time of universe and our seasons and our calendars so eloquently that the orientation of the ship is exactly steered up to receive the shortest day sunrise of midwinter. And that day in this location of the height above equator is such that the point of compass this happens is in southeast. And the day of this location, the shortest day, is actually quite close to 6 hours, meaning the sun sets in southwest. Another point of compass. The half year late after the longest day, the sun will actually rise in the middle of the ship. It's opposites. In that would be northeast, of course. And then it would have 18 days, 3/4 day long. So it would set in northwest behind in the largest stone in the exact opposite direction. After many years guiding this place, I came to get used, my eyes started to get used to study and spend time with these stones. And finally, I realized, quite surprised, that they are not merely stone boulders, kind of randomly picked any place and put in position. In quite stark contrast to that, they are not only carefully chosen and positioned in its place, it's carefully chosen because of what kind of stone quality, colors, other things. And on top of that, they are also minutely small details. You can actually start to catch the signals of that handcraft men have cut away small parts, or they have made some small things about it. And starting to watch this, the stone that catches the sunset of the shortest day in southwest of this monument, I started to circle these stones, and I got a kind of funny, humorous, broken image statue of something looking a little bit like, it could be like a ram's horn or something. Or actually, later I would like say, but hey, wait a minute, what kind of star sign is it right now? It's in the middle of the winter when we celebrate Christmas. And well, I would go to study, and of course it turns out that the star sign for midwinter is 22nd of December, Capricorn. I think maybe the switch between it is 22nd or 23rd. So closer research from that, you can find the exact details. But I think it's actually the 22nd of December. So Capricorn is kind of a goat. And the stone was like broken, if you circle it, like in a Picasso-esque structure. You could pick up clues if you would set aside your all too critical thinking. You could make a plausible kind of feeling of there's kind of a gestalt. There's a kind of a creature intended or slightly shown as a character there, and that of course would make him like an actor in a play to play the memory game of the time. How do we follow calendars and seasons and all those other things? So now comes the interesting thing, and that made me start to think and to realize how clever things are, because actually the ancient traditions in Sweden for Christmas, we will call it Yule. That's kind of very close to wheel. And a wheel of time is actually very frequent petroglyph in Scandinavia. Most languages, though, will have a finger like warning finger. We have no clear evidence anywhere of written sources that wheel and Yule is meant to be the same thing. I would argue, since a circle with a cross, 4 spokes, is an extremely frequent petroglyph in Scandinavia. Not only that, the spokes is actually oriented according to points of compass, so precise it's almost like a very precision instrument put down on the bedrock there. So, and there are thousands and thousands of these time wheels. Even the archaeologists will call them time wheels. So in the kind of, we celebrating Merry Yule will be kind of the eternal cyclic event of season going across the 4 different variations and returning to this shortest day. So that would of course be like a position where you would connect, and you will tie, and you will memorize or use intelligence and logic to have this specific time of the year remembered, or as a vital part, or it would be probably called cardinal, something cardinal. A cardinal is actually kind of the highest, some of the highest in the Vatican church hierarchy or something. So cardinal would be like something really major. And so celebrate wheel, from written sources we know in Scandinavia, they had 9 days celebrations around midwinter, or winter solstice, you should say. So the winter solstice would in ancient time have 9 days in celebration, and a lot of people have made clear connections about the numerology in the Norse traditions is very much focused on 9, as is the Egypt culture. So we celebrate 25th of December as the birth of the new child. That's the new sun year. In Egypt, that would be depicted as a baby crocodile. Then there would be 12 symbols. Of course, the zodiac constellations. And after those 12 symbols, different symbols, would be a giant crocodile. And in their mythology, they would go from the birth, that would be tied to 25th of December. And the death of the giant crocodile, the crocodile would symbolize time. He is like paddling in the river of Nile, like symbolic of time. And the giant crocodile actually dies 22nd of December. Now, please notice how carefully the astrological signs are tied acutely, precisely to the events of most likely actually exactly an Egypt sun calendar. I will try to check up that on the detail, but this monument that I guided in South Sweden actually turned out to have, surprisingly, the structure that would have symmetrically keenly positioned stones following the midwinter and the sequence of the Egypt sun calendar that has every month 30 days apart from one. And this month would be July, in the end of July. And that would be kind of the month after summer solstice. They would have 5 or 6 extra days. That would be festivities days. This monument here actually keenly follows this exception in a very symmetrical, very nice structure. I could present it some other time with pictures and material to see. So back to the story of the Egypt, like the baby crocodile born in 25th of December. In Scandinavia, ancient traditions is there will be a Yule goat. The Yule goat, he will come to the family on the night before Christmas Day. He would knock on the door, and the door is kind of symbolic of a portal. And the door would open. No child could ever see who threw in the gift. But there would be a gift thrown into the floor, and it would be addressed to one of the children in the room that happily would go and get this gift from the Yule goat. Now, if we carefully connect some information, we see that Capricorn is the celestial constellation chosen for the winter solstice entrance. And we celebrate in ancient traditions, and still today, the very popular Christmas is the largest festivity of the year. That's 25th of December. What does Swedes do still today? Most other churches does not have the very early sermon in Christmas morning. So the Swedes would go before the sun rises, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. They would be ready and they would get a service from the priest in the church. And then they would go out before the sun would rise, exactly like this ancient monument in Scandinavia is so beautifully oriented with the orientation of the ship, receiving the sunrise of the shortest day exactly in the axis of this ship. So here we see a lot of details like connecting together, and most likely I would address this tie-in for the Yule goat, that would be kind of the Christmas goat, and Capricorn most likely absolutely must be an ancient wisdom tradition offered or celebrated, gifted to every generation to come on, and to have this like clear symbolic connection about the celestial star of Capricorn. Goat is the goat. It's actually the fish goat from ancient times. Most likely, maybe the goat and the fish was the thing you could feed yourself from this time of the year. And this ritual in Sweden with the Yule goat, even so that the Yule means actually a wheel, the time wheel, I would argue against the linguists. And I would try to offer the archaeologists to wisen up and consider. Of course, they will not be too happy to listen to me, because they will like be watchdog. They will guard their discipline and their, well, tax dollars, so they can have their little science alone, and no poor amateurs come and stick them in the eyes with irritating facts to consider. But all the chiseled or created petroglyphs of sun wheels, actually most of them even correctly oriented in the geography around it to the correct points of compass. That's astounding. Uh, those things, the Christmas wheel and the Yule, well, Yule would actually mean wheel. The time wheel goes in for its turn, and the construction of the Earth axis most likely is presented in the English lore of Santa Claus climbs down the chimney, most likely a cipher about the Earth axis. He climbs down the chimney the 25th of the December in the morning. The children rushes to the sock to get the gift. A little bit similar, like the Swedish children 150 years ago would have the Yule goat knock on the door, the portal. You enter, you end the old, you enter the new sun year. And the Yule goat throws in gift. And still today, we can see what is the celestial star connected, the zodiac constellation chosen for midwinter, no, for winter solstice. That's the Capricorn. Yeah, probably more things, but I've been running for a while here. Let's invite you, Bridgette.
I'm just listening to the whole thing.
Great.
I'm taking it all in. Yeah, we weren't sure what we're going to talk about, but we thought we'd talk about this and language, because language, and I just want to throw something in there. I had this conversation with, well, lately I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and
Mm-hmm.
not that I'm super smart, but because of the, people I know who are like yourself, who are investigating things and learning
Sure.
things about things, and having these discussions, what people believe regularly in the outside world. And sometimes it's hard for me, like, if I go to work on somebody physically, um and I have to be really careful about what I say, because it has to fit into their perceived reality. So
Mm-hmm.
usually if I'm working on people, I get to know them to try to find out, like, kind of what religion they are. Um, so I can put the whole languaging and everything, to them in a way that they're going to understand it, about how their body works, um, how they need to get their mental thing going, because I work on so many different levels that, I have to be able to explain it and communicate it. But the interesting thing is, I'm finding personally
Mm-hmm.
less and less people to be able to communicate to, because everyone is trapped in a language, a designed language, right, to
Mm-hmm.
deceive.
Mm-hmm.
And I catch it all the time. For example, I had this guy who, you know, I, who is American, grew up in Dallas or whatever else, on Facebook. I don't know tons about him.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things is that, he's been given an Indian kind of Hindu name. So maybe he studied somewhere, or, he adopted that kind of name, but I don't think that he is Hindu. But anyway, the thing is, we were having a conversation on Facebook, typing back and forth just about some things, and especially about relationships. And it's interesting that a lot of the people that I'm around are single, and just watching how they have been designed to get a partner, or, like, attract in a partner. And also how this is, like, you know, the biggest thing that most people are focused in on is having a relationship or getting one, which shocks me, 'cause there should be so many other things we should be focused in on, like higher learning, higher feeling, like um,
Mhm.
more education, and it's because of the language. And I was talking to him about like why would you want to have, a relationship under the guise of, what we're supposed to have globally. I meing, women in most cases in most countries are still considered like cattle, right? They're owned. They're not like a free being making a decision about having a relationship. They're sold off.
I would object to that, but please go on.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's still a lot of arranged marriage. There's still a
Sure,
lot of
sure,
these kinds of things
sure.
that goes on, right? Old families and what they
Yeah.
owe and debt and women are anyway. So and just a lot of other aspects. And so I said, when you have these kinds of relationships, like you want to get married, like in America, you want to get
Mhm.
married and have the ideal jobs and make money and vacation and find the ideal partner and get, a house with a white picket fence and have 2.5 kids, how things are structured out on how people think that they're supposed to live because this is the design that's been created with the language. And I said that relationship is, if you are in a relationship with somebody, because of all the steps that you take, you're in a relationship with the government, because who do you have to apply to get a marriage license? And then you have to go to the church that is also criminal,
Mhm.
cartel. And
Uh,
they are involved with the government because you have to have a license with the government in order to perform a marriage.
mhm,
So now you're in bed with, now you're in contract with spiritual contract, financial contract, emotional contract, and mental contract
mhm.
with two other partners, the church and the government, in
Yeah,
your marriage,
and you
right?
don't even you don't
And
even
that's who you're married
no.
to, because those are who you have the contracts to. You're not
Sure,
married to the
sure.
person that you're, sharing a house with.
Mhm, mhm,
So,
mhm.
and I was talking about how, like I've been single and celibate for 20 years because I follow a very ancient shamanic path that
Yes,
women don't engage in relationships, right? It's a very
sure.
particular one. And he was just totally shocked. And he was totally shocked that I was talking about things that he'd never heard about, before. But,
Mm.
the fixation of him trying to find the right person, and I think that's why, he's talking to me on Facebook, is like he's trying to, like, get a
Oh,
girlfriend or a relationship or whatever else. And
mhm,
it's
mhm.
interesting, like people's beliefs, like you have options to relationships, and the other thing too, what about the relationship to yourself? Shouldn't you have that first before you even start engaging in a relationship with somebody else? And then this is the secondary thing. If nature is the co-creation that's been left behind by the creator, the great creator, then why aren't we singularly involved with figuring out our relationship to ourself and co-creation, and working within the co-creation and helping to build co-creation better with nature before we ever engage in any other relationships? Because if we're not engaging in nature, we don't have the abundance necessary to actually support another person in our life. Like you could say, well, I could work another job and I could go to the grocery store and all these other things. But if we living not so much ancient ways, I'd like to try to find modern ways for this to work, but where we have more of a relationship to the land, and we, um, you know, co-create with all that. And then eventually when we have abundance, and then the land tells us now we can bring somebody else in, right? Now it's time. Now it's time to bring somebody else in, to bring somebody else into the relationship, because now you have, you know what I mean, the
Sure, go on.
provisions that are necessary for those things to happen, instead of having to like go out and get them, or you just work with the co-creation, and then you slowly produce enough where it's time to bring in the next. And this is a thought. I was talking to a native friend of mine about this,
Mhm.
and she was talking about, like, in old, native cultures, they had natural, remedies to not get pregnant. They also had
Sure.
natural, stuff to, you know, abort the pregnancy if they knew that the pregnancy wasn't going to be good. Like, if they knew the baby was going to be really deformed, or it was, a rape or something that was like really like not a conscious thing, they had different plants that are available to take care of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so they never would have procreated past their limitations to provide food. So if they would have been going collectively through a drought, they would have tried to minimize, having children into that environment, knowing
Sure.
that somebody would have had to starve to death because there wasn't enough
Sure.
in
Sure.
the co-creation to actually support it all. But then in years of abundance, then they could, they could
Mm-hmm.
procreate and
Mm-hmm.
create, so that they weren't, um, because that's consciousness. I
Sure.
consciously know that if there's a drought and I have a child, the likelihood of me or the child surviving,
Sure.
which
Sure.
one,
Mm-hmm.
or taking the food out of somebody else's mouth in the community, right? So that's saying like, I understand that, and I'm not going to just haphazardly put procreate from that place, because somebody would be harmed, right? So if we're dealing
Sure.
with do no harm, somebody would be harmed. So I think that, a lot of people don't really think a lot of this through, because of the languaging has been changed. People don't really understand, history. Everything's been changed, like science. I mean, science was, connected with deep spirituality. I mean, the more that I study Steiner, the more I know that. I mean, he was kind of at the tail end of how science and spirituality, if you want to call it that, were kind of linked together, because you needed matter and antimatter. You needed the creator and the creation. You needed, gold and this, or you needed this and this. It's alchemical type processes that work with everything, that there is. So everything has been tainted in our world, and we learn things that are like absolutely positively not true.
So this indigenous Indian woman in America, she would be part of the tribe, and the tribe would be keenly guarding its tradition and wisdom. So I would put on the table to talk about this man that is communicating with you over Facebook. We live in a society that has been so pulled away from closeness to creation or to reality. So we live in synthetic constructions maximized for us to have less power and happiness, and some few parasites in the absolute top of the pyramid milking us extremely hard. So that has destroyed for very long time. As you said, like if you today go in society and want to marry someone, you will actually make a contract with the government, and minimum via because of the church makes a contract. If you want to marry, you'll have this paperwork. But the priests of like 1200 1300 in Sweden, they would complain about the peasantry didn't fancy paying him money to get the legal marriage performed in church. They would rather go out to their ancient sacred locations, many times with a petroglyph and erected stones. Like I could actually tell about my mother's farmer village, where she has her heritage from, actually has this site. They have petroglyphs, they have a stone mound, and before it's known there was erected stone. So they would go there and they would actually do the same as they do in the church. In front of everyone in the village, they would take hand. They would kind of like heal, or they will bond together. They will be a unit, and that was in everyone's eye so strict, tied to traditions like, well, for a farmer's village to survive, you really have to be close to creation. You cannot be a dumbwit and farmer and do what you should do and survive from bringing the food yourself on the table together with the community of this farmer village, most likely say 150, 200 persons large. That would be kind of 10, 15 families or something. And they would also keenly know, of course, you will not have only 2.5 children per couple, because that's too little. You should have minimum maybe 4, 5, 6, 7. So and in old times, from hardship of life, the children would die. So that's we would have up to 6, 10 children in old times where we are, because that's this culture. Culture is like the law of wisdom, and the culture and traditions. The traditions would make it sacred to have this relationship and to bond and unite around it. In traditions around where we live in Scandinavia, the life circumstances is so harsh, so there would actually be a mutual balance, power balance between man and woman. There would be circumstances of woman definitely could divorce a man due to the man's behavior, and vice versa. So there would not be so much. Actually, the word in our language is the housewife is like well, that housewife, the symbol of that would be a key on a belt around her hip. She would have this kind of very strong tie or clue that she is the boss for the house, and she owned the key to the house. So and the man, of course, would be he would be the husband, or that would be like house bond, or we have the word farmer is bonde. That's actually living in, or living in a fixed position. That's bonde, or it's very close to living. So you would be in this wisdom traditions. Without it, you could not survive. So I would say a short thing, but maybe you want to make a comment, because I would like to talk about the Oera Linda book from the Frisians of Holland or Netherlands. They mention, and it's proclaimed by some scientists to be a fraud, a forgery, but it mentions so very interesting things about traditions and culture. And why? Because I would feel in my life, I can see for 150 years, families have been uh, gradually um, um, taken away from the strong ancient traditions into a synthetic new structure, and every step of the way, every generation has suffered greatly. And I think a strong need or feeling inside us is we long for this relationship, a good relationship. But I think that's kind of the personal level, needs the societal level around you, and also the grand region around should have so strong traditions to safeguard it, that it's so sacred and natural that all life should be designed around it. Hey, how about you? Would you like to talk a bit?
Well, I was just thinking about, oh, let me stretch a little bit.
Okay.
I gotta stretch it out. No, I was just thinking about, like, in modern time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bumping up against this languaging and relationship and stuff like that. So in 2009, I citizen lobbied. I lobbied with 7 other unbelievably legally brilliant people in the
Mm-hmm.
state of Nevada. And we
Yeah.
fought against, well, we read through 1,500 bills in 6 months, and we all had to go listen to the bills, read the law, read the legislation, sometimes testify against it, provide, research, blah, 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 blah. And I ended up fighting personally against like 50 bills. It was during a period where the bad guys were trying to, I tell people, I went from being a conspiracist lobbying to being a factualist, because all the conspiracies were in actual bills that were trying to be passed in 2009,
Mm-hmm.
especially here in the state of Nevada. And I probably wouldn't have fought if they hadn't come after my private practice and my work, you know, but that's the reason like I fought. But there was 50 bills I was against. I probably sat and listened to the opening of like over 150 bills because I would have to report back to the legal minds
Mhm.
um, if I thought that the bills were sinister or not, right? After reading through them. So I was like learning law and I was learning the language of law because you could read one of these bills and go, wow, I think that's really positive. But if you understood the legal language, you would go, wow, this is like totally horrific. This is like
Sure, sure,
communism,
sure.
so then I would have to go and sit and listen to the opening, and then I would report back to the other people because they were the ones that were hard hitting on the ground, meeting at the committees, fighting, to make sure that some of these things didn't get passed. Anyway, so there was this one bill in particular. So I was for one bill and against 50.
Hmm.
And the conservative people I was working with were so appalled that I was for this bill. And
Uh,
they had a really hard time because they were conservative Mormon, Christian,
uh,
Catholic. They were from very conservative organizations, but these people had held the civil rights as much as they possibly could for the citizens in the state of Nevada. These 7 people have been operating since 1974, had given up their life to make sure people had rights against the state. And in 2009, there was 1,500 bills that were presented that we had to read through. We had to figure out which ones were the worst ones, get in there, try to defeat them. And there
mhm.
were like 8 of us, and there were 890 paid lobbyists we were working against,
Yeah, sure,
and
sure.
special interests,
Hmm.
federal and, and state. And it was not an easy task. My whole head turned completely gray. I worked like 100 hours a week. Like it almost like totally killed me. But anyway, this one bill I was for, the conservative, this is when they tell you, this is why education can be really important, to be able to learn to agree to disagree, where you come together and you agree and work together on the things you agree about, and then you will have disagreements on certain things.
Hmm.
That's just how it's going to
Hmm.
be. But
Hmm.
learning how to negotiate, learning how to present, and not really, you know education can teach you that. If you're not educated and you're not used to people standing up and saying, I don't believe you, and this is my theory about the whole thing, and going back and forth through education systems, higher education, you're
Hmm.
always in this place where you have to um you know, presume, you have to stand with your presumption, even if it's like under attack. And then it helps you to define, what do you really think about, what you really know, and listening to the other side. I mean, there might be pieces that you're like, wow, I'm totally in agreement with that. But I'm not in agreement with this. So I learned to agree to disagree. But the bill was basically um, so that people that didn't want to get married could write their own contract of agreement that was binding.
Hmm.
And I was like, that I would totally do that because I could say, okay, for the contract, I could say, okay, get together with the person and be like, okay, so hey, honey, um, let's do a 5-year initial binding contract of, having a relationship, and you put together your pages, I'll put together my pages, what the deal breakers are, if things don't work out, how we separate things, and then we'll come to the table and we'll negotiate the final contract, so that we did it ourselves. And then it was only $25 to file it. So it was binding, right, by admiralty law and corporate law and civil law. It was binding. And because, like say you get married and then underneath, these systems, and they decide what you're going to get and who's going to get it. And then they end up taking most of it through attorneys
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly,
Where
exactly. Sure,
this
sure.
would be like, hey, I got issues about cheating, you cheat, it's over. Like the 5-year contract is null and void, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
And then
sure.
you can come together and do a 5-year contract, or if you feel more confident, maybe do a 10-year, or after the 5-year, you could do a 10-year, if you feel more and more comfortable. But it's 2 people coming together building the language, building the contract of what they want to participate, what they don't want to participate in. And then at that point, you can decide whether it's a deal you want to actually sign on to or not. It's not a good enough deal for you to be involved. And so so they like rally at the end of the legislature when they found out that I was for this one bill. Um,
They
and I tried to explain to them that they called it the gay and lesbian bill
okay.
for gay and lesbian marriage. That it's eroding the Bible. It's eroding, and I said it's not, because it gives a woman the power to decide and to negotiate what she's involved in, right? Not being told to love, honor, and obey. Are you kidding me? They don't make men say those things when we get married in the US. You have to agree to love, honor, and obey. It's like, I'm not obeying anybody. So I should never get into a marriage contract of that nature, because I totally disagree to anybody obeying anybody. If the person is not acting in the highest good, I'm not going to be a fan of them anymore. And I'm not going to continue to obey them and follow along like a sheep. But
Mm.
I think about, that we could in the modern age, create things that are beneficial, that create equality among people, like this bill, this contract bill, that for me, would have been way more positive for me and it would have really made me sit down and think about, every part of this relationship, that I'm coming together with this person. These are all how I feel, what I need, what I want, what I can give. And then they're doing the same thing, and you come together, and if it doesn't equal each other, and there's no negotiating, together to build the final product, then you just know that it's not going to work. So you can just walk away instead of, have to get a divorce and have to deal with all these things and petition this and petition that and whatever else has to happen. And then by then you're usually engaged in a home or whatever else. And so now you've got like a whole other thing. Now you've got to move, you've got financial, strains, when it would have been better if you would have come together as two people and negotiated it and made a contract that both of you could live by.
Would it be possible to build traditions and culture from an openness? In my thinking, I will go to the traditions would probably have this initial situation. So someone either by construction of agreeing marriage because it will benefit, well, what interest, but the culture, the village, the farmer village around here, there would be a natural need for maybe free choice of. I think in our cultures of Scandinavia, there would be there would be love and free choice. It could be an agent deciding if you marry. But when you do marry, there should be kind of the tradition and customs or culture would probably feel we will disappear from Earth if we don't procreate. So procreate, create next generation. If I would go back to see my life in perspective backwards, I would clearly mark the creation of my two children as the reason and the best thing I did in life. So that's the reason for me. I can clearly see it now. A lot of things done in life is actually unnecessary, but this thing that I have, the next generation, is kind of obvious in one way. So that would be the religious kind of, or the cultural marker that we do encourage the creation of next generation. Here is the social construct we do it under. So you're discussing to make a social construction. So that's your why not sit and agree about it? Yes. Will this create? Because I heard you other times mention like you can feel some of the negative sides of your culture regarding the view or treatment of women, like under the foot of the man, and I'm pretty sure both men and women can be the most severe bad leaders if the circumstances is for it. So it doesn't matter if it's a man or woman that could be the worst dictator in human history, or in a relationship, or in a society, or whatever. So but that in law, women have no say in English common law. So I heard you mention that, and I could clearly understand.
Yeah.
I could clearly
Well, and
understand.
this is the
Go.
thing for me is like I think I have like one as a woman, I have one foot in the past
Hmm.
where, I would love to live more, off the land, you know,
Yeah.
making the things that I want, but
Hmm.
I don't think I ever, 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 ever would have had kids. And I
Yeah.
don't have kids. And it's just something that I, if this was something that would have been impressed in some kind of community, right, to have children,
Hmm.
then I would have been isolated out because I probably wouldn't have complied under any circumstance.
Yeah, I
So,
have a comment on that, but continue. I have a
yeah.
comment on it.
So
Continue.
the other thing too is that when I was younger, I used to think kind of like more fairy tale like, I guess, where I thought love was like really important in order to have like a really good, working relationship. And now that the older I am, I realize like love doesn't really matter. Like, if I met somebody who was compatible to me and had compatible, philosophies, like wants to buy land, grow
Hmm.
their own food, organic, because owning a piece of land is a huge amount of work, right? Having love and like having all this emotional stuff going on in the mix of it is probably going to be not that positive at times when there's a lot of drama that's going on, like two people coming together to work and build something. So now in my life, I really could see coming together to have a contract with somebody where you build something, you put it together, and as as your relationship, and then if it builds greater feelings, great, and if not, that's fine too. But in order to live on land and off grid, you've got to have people who have skills. You got to have people who have abilities. You got to have people that actually can do the labor, right? You've got to have
Sure, sure.
people that actually can work together without a lot of drama and a lot of communication. I had a friend of mine who was in the military, and so sometimes he was funny. He said, "Okay, so I'm going to test you, And so he goes, "Can you tell me this story in one sentence?" And I was like, "Well, no, I don't think I can tell you everything I need to tell you in one sentence." He goes, "Well, in the military, that's what we focus in on. What you need to know in a short amount
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
time to get it out, because, you may be on a battlefild and you don't have time to listen to a
Oh,
40-minute story, right?"
that's a very masculine
Yeah. So
way to solve issues. Go on.
right. So this is how like farming is, when I'm doing a lot of farming work, I don't answer my phone. I'm not on social media.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have time. I don't have time to actually talk to people. And if there's problems on the land, you don't really have time to deal with those people's drama either. Because,
Mm.
you've got animals that have to get
Sure,
out of
sure.
their pens in the morning and get to the right place to be taken care of. They got to be watered. You got to get some breakfast, right? You've got to
Sure,
make your breakfast. You got to get that together. You got to go back out. And
sure.
then you have a list of, 100 things that need to be done. And
Sure.
then a revolving list. And then on top of it, during the course of the day, you're going to have something happen, like two of your sheep escape. You have no idea how they escape, and you have no
Yeah.
idea where they're at. And you have to go on the major like hunt to try to find your sheep, and also try to, watch them to see where they're sneaking out. You might have to sit up all night with a flashlight just to figure it out.
Mhm.
Um, and so you don't have time to deal with a lot of the types of relationship dramas that people are in these days, and getting to that point where you can actually work together with somebody, where you can just communicate um, something in just like a couple short sentence, so you can get back to doing what you're doing. And you do it as, more a love of the land and a love of co-creator, being
Sure.
learning how to co-create and being in love with the creator and creator's creation, and rehabilitating that and loving that and caretaking that. And so you do it more, not as a spiritual thing, but you do it because, it's kind of the right thing to do without a lot of the energies and dramas. So I could see, at this point in my life, having a contract with somebody else to just, get land going, and then see, what happens after that. Maybe do like a 25-year project, and then at the end of 25 years you're released from it, and then we decide whether we're going to sell the property, if we're going to split it, if one person's going to take it and pay out the other person, or if both people want to stay on. So, something like that. I think in the modern age for me would be probably pretty ideal, and getting away from, having to be in love, and getting away from all this, sexual type stuff. Um, you know, Baiting, a lot of women do, baiting, and they don't realize that they bait. They've been trained to bait from birth. And it's a non-vocal thing, doesn't have a language, just kind of imprinted
So
on
true.
you. So, but getting away from all that stuff, get away from the current archetypal patterns of men and women, and how they're supposed to mate and have relationships, and get to more of, how do we come together to work together, to build something better first.
Well, and I would say there would be the inner circle of the couple, but there would be circles around it. So I feel modern life is created to have this structure around us. We are broken. We are destroyed units. We are soon not even molecules. We are free, torn apart molecules into free atoms, just drifting around and easily controlled by a megastructure above us. So societies like the societal structure around should also grow from cooperation. So I would tend to, it's a kind of romantic idea to venture back for social structures more connected as a farmer's village, like 10-15 farms clustered together, and community around it. In our past of Scandinavia, for example, and all the world, I'm sure there would be the blacksmith, there would be other trade or crafts tasks to take care of in a village. You would need a lot of things and cooperate and have the structure. Now I will go to a comment I wanted to
Yeah, but
say
this
about.
is the thing, is like, for me, I could build a piece of land where I give people the opportunity that want to bring in those skills onto the land, so that we're a full functioning, piece of land. But we're not a community, right?
Mhm.
We're working together, right? We're
Yeah.
not a community, and we're building and working together, which is like the focus. No children, probably not partnerships, because in the beginning there's a
Yeah.
huge amount of work that has to be done.
Mhm.
Um, and then the other thing too is that, what would have bridged that in ancient times was that everybody in that environment, in your area, would have already had a similar religious belief, a
Well,
spiritual belief. And
wisdom traditions.
that's the biggest problem with the communities that I've been on over 30,
Sure.
worked with 30
Well.
communities and everything, and didn't stay on any of them, because at some point there was something that was always like a deal breaker for me having to
Mhm.
leave.
Mhm.
But the biggest problem is that I'm not, because I move on to a piece of land, I'm not going to assimilate, that those belief systems, if those are not the belief systems that I want to have. And a lot of the communities now don't really have very good spiritual systems, because all of their systems have modes of enslavement that are, embedded in it, and they
Mhm.
don't realize it. And so for me, doing shamanic work, like heavy duty shamanic work,
Yeah.
and being super committed to this kind of work. And also it can be hair raising for people that aren't experienced in this type of work. Sometimes things just start shifting and morphing in a way that a lot of people just can't be around me. For example, when I was around, I don't know how old I was, 26, 25, I was dating a guy who um, we woke up in the middle of the night and there's all these orbs floating around the bedroom. Totally freaked him out. He never came back, never called me, like totally lost it. And he considered himself spiritual, he did spiritual work. But,
All right.
so, I dated somebody else
How
where
did you
I
do that?
I
How
dated,
did you create the orbs? Like,
no, they just come and visit me.
oh,
They're
okay.
beings, right? That come,
Yeah.
and that's just how it is. I'm an open doorway sometimes, and there's nothing I can do about it. But so lots of different things like that. So on the land that I'm going to be on has to be committed to, the creator and the creation, and focusing in on the spiritual work, and operating on all levels, especially energetically, with the land and with the beings, and the beings that live in all of the things that are living, and that interaction that's taking place. So for me, like give people a 2-year apprenticeship to see if they can handle it, being on the land, being in that kind of an energy field, and that way giving them a way out if they can't.
Sure.
um,
But
but not
imagine,
having a community where people come to learn shamanism or be part of shamanism. I don't want to have anything to do with any of that. That's
but
not, because it
uh,
takes away from the work, that I want to do, which is on the land. I really want the rest of my life to be digging in the dirt and growing plants and making
sure,
medicine and
sure.
growing food, because that's all I've ever wanted to do my whole life. And I've had to be, sidetracked to do all this other stuff, the journey. But
No,
I
no,
think that, I think
let's
when you're,
stop there. Let's
when
stop
you're,
there because ten generations from now, you will be Saint Bridget, the ancient spirit that actually came together and created this well, organic growing thing that becomes a culture and tradition that holds in the, well, you're self-sufficient, like, so
I
then
hope not. I hope,
you would actually have started the path of a social tradition structure to build. I think there must be many generations. That's why they so keenly destroyed Scandinavia. It took them 1,000 years. And step by step demounting first the spiritual traditions, then step by step going down to the social structure of the area, down to 200 years ago they broke down the farmers village. They threw all the farmers out on the village area for separate lone
yeah.
farm.
Well, here you think about America, at least you're closer to that. Um, history, where in America, everybody but Native people, right,
Mhm.
indigenous people,
Yeah,
came here
1,000 years.
from somewhere else,
Sure, sure.
and they left their culture and their history, behind. And then they didn't like the culture or history that was here, so they massacred them and destroyed them, lost all of the knowledge about all the sacred sites here, right?
Mhm.
And all of, the information that probably may have been important. So we're here, we're like thousands of, I mean, I tell people this all the time, like I have shaman roots in Siberia, and I have that, and there's something in me genetically, right?
Mhm.
But because I've never been to Russia, I don't have any connection to Russia other than my family and this genetic thing.
Mhm.
I was always mystified, like, just by native ceremony and by the culture, and by, a lot of the traditional stuff, that I started moving into that and learning more about that to substitute my roots in Siberia, because I'm not there and I'm not connected with it. I mean, maybe someday I'll be able to travel to the Siberian area, and
Sure.
I can, openly see if somebody is there waiting for me. I know, waiting for me to come so that they can
Mm,
teach me, right? So that I
yeah,
might be like one of the last carriers of knowledge. I don't know.
sure.
I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that in my past, I've had situations where I've had shaman, native people. There was an older gentleman that had to be like visually over 100 years old that used to come in my energy field, and I was going through this period, and he would sing me through it, and he
Yeah.
would sing more Native American type song, and sometimes he would just be a cappella with no drum
Uh-huh.
or anything, like, not going to try to botch this, but being like, hey, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
singing his
okay.
song, yeah, and whatever it was. And then there was another time where he came and he had a drum, and he was so loud singing that when I parked in front of my friend's house and I went in the house, he goes, "Oh, did you get a new native CD? That's a really good one. It has like a really upbeat." And I said, "No, it's this native man who comes in my energy field and comes into this world, and he sings me through when I need to get through." And then when I started learning a lot about that native people in Americas have a sing-songy language, right? So this is how they talk to everything, was
Sure.
their language was sing-songy. So they sang to, that's how they communicated to everything, and how
Sure.
everything would communicate back. And then learning more about Australia, and that, they sing songs to remember how to get through different places, like it maps processes in their head so they know how to travel from one thing to the other. And then they know the song to sing to this rock
Yeah, 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 sure.
because they're lost, and that rock tells them where to go to the next place, and then they get there and they sing,
Mm,
whatever story
mhm,
that they need to
mhm,
sing, that
mhm.
vibration frequency of
Sure, sure.
communication. So um but anyway, so a lot of this kind of stuff I'm going to be doing, when I do it now, and I'm, trying to build. But I wish that I would have had someone from this Siberian shaman type culture. And I believe that I come from one that's white, blue-eyed, from that area, because there are a lot of these amazing. I saw a woman who is from the Siberia, Russian area, who's white, who has blue eyes, she has blonde hair, and she sings animal languages. So she can totally sing every animal. She can make all the sounds that all these animals make. And then she actually puts them into songs. And, I think, wow, I mean, how amazing is that? I
Sure.
mean, that you could use something like that. But so I've had to adopt, and I'm glad that I had it to adopt more of the, and I know that a lot of Native people don't want to be called Americans that are in America. So I'm
Sure.
sorry if I, botched up
Yeah,
there. But
sure, sure.
the, Native cultures that I have been exposed to here, I'm just super glad that I've had them to fill, this area that needs, that I have a genetic predisposition for, and not have the culture. So, I mean,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, you're really lucky because you are closer to that culture. You're closer to those languages. It makes it easier for you to figure
Yeah,
it out. Where I
but
don't
but
even speak Russian, so I couldn't even like start to be able to navigate down that
let,
kind
let,
of a hole.
let me get a break there, because then actually what I do is I more closely mourn the situation that I can see all too clear, that these several hundred years, up to 1,000 years, invested, and this this our so-called parasite or enemy, or opponent, or the scheming structure, aiming to get everyone else to give them something for free, but the only system is to break us down. So that's kind of depressing. I made this. You can see my, like, I really allowed my hair to just grow, because I wanted to find who how is the like native, what is the native in me? So I can come closer to masculinity, and by God, how masculinity have been just destroyed, ravaged in Sweden, Scandinavia, and all the West for all too long. So now for too long, the culture around here is that um, on a above cultural structure, there is an encouragement of women to act out victimhood as automated rights to dominate and bash a man any second they feel like it, and there should be no recourse for a man. Never, if she feel like it. It's even so bad now. So most positions of high chief or executive positions in most companies are now positioned more and more and more by women, and they start to behave like womanish in this very negative way. So I'm all too close to culture, but I start to see like that's really my purpose in life, to collect, to defend, and to build, and to prepare the ground for it to grow, and to amend, start to see like, well, this is how I got here, and try to give the gift to my children, to try to take their step from generation to generation, to try to work for better this, and to come back to something that's actually building back traditions, culture, and customs. So I have a comment. What I would like to comment from before is there's a purported forgery. It's called the Oera Linda book. they its earliest parts is most likely said to be written more than 3,500 years ago, and that is so baffling in itself, to say that in Frisia of the Netherlands, Holland, 3,500 years ago there was a writing system. But I am more convinced that this entity or culture destroying us, they do it by destroying, stealing our history, destroying it, and turning it around for something fake. Most likely on the bottom of the continental shelf around the world, there is evidence of structures like towns, like pyramids, whatever. Even at 700 meters depth west of Cuba is the clear trace of a gigantic pyramid and a gigantic stadium around it. And for something to have the sea level 700 meters down, the scientists, geology, they will barely accept that the sea level was 200 meters lower during Ice Age. But during Ice Age, I think culture like ours, or even more magnificent, have been around. And culture and wisdom is nothing new. Farming is not 10,000 years ago it started. It resettled. It has to save what they needed to save from all the land disappearing under the rising ice age, melting water, totally reshaping the structure of Earth. So we should be more open to our traditions, and let's go to language, but because language probably have so ancient logic, wisdom connected to it. It's a very fascinating subject to dive into. In the Oera Linda book, they go through their cultures and traditions and customs, and they are so strict. They are like extremely strict about a view of the world, but a protection of their part of their identity. And in it is not only to clearly in the psyche of everyone in their culture to be of them and from their culture and together with it, so much that if a girl actually would ask to marry outside the Frisians, it was the father's or the family's duty to tell her, this is folly, you should not do it. But if she insisted, she should be allowed to leave and follow her heart, but never be allowed to come back, because then she would be of foreign culture. It would break them down. So the Frisians, according to this book, and I believe you could actually put more value to the possibility of it being real, because what is described in it as the textual or the structure of the wisdom in it is clearly wisdom's word. So when they grow up, boys becoming 13, that's the age of doing military training to master the weapon of choice you choose. Then to be part of structure for protection of the lands of the Frisians. If a boy became more than 25 years old and did not match up from free will with a girl to create family, he should be not allowed to be still living in the family. He should be encouraged to be put aside and start to live his life from his own effort, someone else, and not enjoy the family structure and support. If boy and girl decided for marriage, they should have their house in the village in a free house, in a new, well, in a house, existing house, and they should have it for free. That's kind of a meta structure of so beautifully strong culture. It really takes care of the most important things, where maybe your Facebook man chatting so much with you, longing for love, he would actually have the Eber structure of a society naturally, just in the right age where you will be part of something in the small and in the bigger. And it's quite beautifully described and very well worth reading this
Yeah,
way of
there's
the book.
yeah, and the Anastasia books too. People can look those
Sure,
up. Ringing Red Cedars. She talks about a lot of that type of
I should read it.
community living. Yeah, I
I,
think like
I should read it
around
because I heard
book
of it.
4 and 5, she really starts kind of talking about that kind of a similar thing, the
Right.
similar mindset. Okay, so anyway, we're gonna head into the ending
Yes.
of this, but so we're gonna add in some herbalism. Whew,
Oh,
whew, whew.
shit.
So we're gonna have you talk about your well, you could call it spirit gum, you could call it when they liquefy it, it would be like a spirit gum. Um, Parr calls it spruce gum, and you could call it tree sap. And there's lots of medicinal usages for it. You can add the sap with beeswax and boil it and turn it into a really killer, kick-ass, skin salve. You can also use the sap in lots of different ways. You can actually make tinctures out of it too, for different medicinal purposes. Bees honeybees love using the pollen of pine trees and spruce trees to actually create what they call propolis, which is what they wallpaper the inside of their beehive with, that keeps all bacteria and fungus and mold and everything out. So it's very antimicrobial, antibacterial.
Mhm.
And so we're gonna have Parr tell us how he uses it. So how do you use your
Well,
spruce gum? How'd you go?
yeah.
How'd you go collect it? First, tell that.
No, I if we can, let's have a recording later where I could show some pictures from some of my research of the prehistoric sacred sites, and one of those in the area here with petroglyphs is in a historic location, and also the trees around it. It's kind of hilly, it's mountain range area here. It's called fjell in even in English. Fjell means mountain range area. So the fjells of Norway, Scandinavian fjells and fjords. The fjords are the famous mountain area close to the sea with large inland bays, like going long into the land, but it's the sea. So here in the inland of Norway is what historically was Norway inland's most fish-rich river, inland rivers. In this location, there is petroglyphs. They're assumed to be like 6,000-7,000 years old, and I visit there. So it's kind of steep. I have to descend probably 200-300 meters from where I parked the car 1 kilometer away. So it's kind of very, very downhills to walk here, and then I come down to the river side. And there I have one tree that's actually beautiful. It's a very old one, big one, beautiful. It's a beautiful guy. So he has, for some reason, almost for 3-4 meters on all sides of his bark on the lower end. And I can see some insects drilling into his bark downways. So maybe he is working his magic to have this protection, because spruce and all trees, they will have this gum to disinfect damage on it. So as you said, I many years ago I tried to dress up myself as who is inside me. I'm a Scandinavian. I'm kind of, well, Viking, maybe yes, maybe no, but I just let my hair grow. So naturally, after some while, the facial hair goes larger. I start to learn about beard wax. And then in reading on the ingredients, I kind of wanted to, like, well, I want to start to learn. And I checked some YouTube videos, and then the easy way to make a beard wax is to have beeswax. As a side note, my dear father was a beekeeper, had this as a big passion in his life, so I know everything about bees to the point where I was 4 or 5 years old, and I'm saving a poor little bee from the garden. He's kind of struggling, and he has the end of he's really beaten up hard. So I'm putting it in my hand and walking into mommy to show it, and my little sister comes and all my memories from that day is blank. I'm 5 years old, but I sit in the train home from Stockholm in the night with dad and my sister, and I'm looking at a super large hand that's pounding from all the blood. Like, so this memory will never escape me. So I know quite a deal about bees and everything. So propolis, for example. I learned about it. I got some beeswax, and I started to experiment with different oils. I had some argan oil. I had frankincense oil. That's actually from a tree's gum, and it's one of the most beautiful oils I ever saw. Frankincense oil is so it's hard to describe. It's very, very, very interesting product. It's kind of difficult for me to get some more. And finally I started to, like, well, I need some gum myself. So I started to collect out in the forest. I felt it smelled too much forestry. I had from not too nice quality from a kind of industrial area, growing trees with lots of dead trees and this and that. But after I found here, and I've worked with these beeswax for making beard wax for a couple of years now, I found the gum of this tree, and after I was a little restricted to not take too much, but then I took more and more to get I want to have the correct stickiness of it. So this spruce gum, this spruce tree, it's called Christmas tree as well. That's spruce. So, and this spruce gum makes from this tree an astonishing, beautiful smell. I really like it. Probably it's a little bit too masculine, too strong for others, but I'm starting to feel almost like it's a health benefit. It goes up to me because it sits here in my beard, so I have it straight up in the nose, and I'm really starting to love this smell. And also I almost feels like it changes my mood or my health status in sorts of ways. I really love it, and I changed my recipe quite a lot. And from this, it's difficult to get the balance from wax and oil, because it's easy to get it too soft, and it's really just and then too hard, and to get this exactly where you want for some nice stickiness, so it's a useful product, is kind of difficult until I started with this spruce gum, and now I really just pound my recipe a great deal with this, and it gets a
So how do
beautiful
you
stickiness.
so how do you make it? How do you make it? So you put wax
Yeah.
and you put spruce sap in it,
Hmm.
or spruce gum is what you're calling it. So spruce
Yeah.
sap. And then you do what? Like you melt them together,
Sure,
you
sure, sure, sure. I just melt it. I just melt it. And I will have some, I will have probably some 50, 70 grams of, that would be 2, 3 ounces of beeswax. And then I will try to have maybe 25, 30% oils. I had before, and I had some argan oil. I had some, and sometimes I take some coconut oil. I don't try to do too much from it. And I try to find
so
and
when do you put the sap in it? You put the sap, the
I
oil,
can
and the
put it all at the
beeswax
same
together?
time, and I take
Okay.
low heat on the stove, and I have a metal volume meter in metal, and I put it there, and slow heat because you'll really have to guard that you don't have hot, very strong heat, and leave it, because you will create a quite acute catastrophe if you will heat up too much and it start to come onto you. So you'll have to be careful. And then it melts quite easily, quite fast. And then I will pour around with a wood stick or something. I, I figure, well, because sap is kind of what we have a special word in our language for sap, and then like chewing gum. But I think gum is actually, gum arabica is one of the large products from the acacia trees of the savanna of Africa. Is a huge product in the food industry, and that's called clearly gum arabica. Well, gum from acacia tree. So, but it's sap, of course, and yeah, I think maybe it's this specific tree. He's very old. This guy is very old and has very densely covered in the bark with quite a lot of this sap. Then, so it's kind of easy to get a lot from it. I try to not hurt him, of course, and I don't need too much, but I have quite much now. I take everything I have and just down in here and melt it up. So it would probably be like 30, 40 gram of spruce gum.
How long does that last you think? A year?
Half year. I
And then
could
so how much do you put on your beard and how often?
every day, because I have quite today my camera is giving me black and white color. It's kind of funny, but if you saw any of the other videos, I actually never color my hair, and my mother is 86 years old. She hardly have any gray hair anywhere, so I have very natural and strong hair, or constitution of the hair, and I also have very thick hair. So I'm blessed with hair. So if I don't do anything, it will be kind of not in agreement with me to kind of keep any nice shape. So I have to use it every day, and I will use it many times. I of course need to have a comb in my pocket to go to a mirror or something to check
Mm.
everything is all right. And when I put on new, the smell is really, really glorious. It's kind of very nice to have it as an addition. I will see
Yeah,
it.
no, that's one thing about herbalism. It's like, my salves, and I open a jar to use it, for
Hmm.
whatever purpose, like my medic salve.
Hmm.
It has, I love it. The smell is just so good. I use sagebrush because sagebrush is antibacterial, antimicrobial, and it's also blood clotter.
Hmm.
And then I used mugwort flowers, which mugwort has a lot of vitamin E, and mugwort has a lot of healing potential. And then I also used horsetail, which has tons of
Yeah,
silicon.
yeah,
And then I also used some flowering peppermint that I found. And so all of this was infused in oil. I used the organic hand pressed olive oil for 8 weeks. And then I take and I cheesecloth and macerate the plants and the rest of the oil out of it. And then I put it on low temperature. I add a local beeswax to it, and then I put it into a
Wow.
salve. But
Mhm, mhm.
I call it the medic salve. It's and so it will clot blood. It does like all kinds of amazing things. But I open that jar and I smell it, like I get a little burn or something on my finger, and I open that jar and then I get the waft of just
Yeah.
glorious, beautiful smell. And so it like sets you up for this great healing or and feeling good and changing your energy, like it's just I just love that about herbalism, is about the how happy it actually can make your body and make your senses, and it's a simple mood enhancer for sure. And also you have herbs that help to relax you and calm you down and do lots of beautiful things. But I think the more you're involved with herbalism, the more you like the stronger smells and you just really look forward to it. I don't know how other people feel when you go walking by, but you're leaving a train of,
Yeah.
aromatherapy behind you.
And as on my part now, I've come so long that I actually started to check up some gear for condensed distilling, like heating up and have distillation. I think spruce pines, as a spruce tree, the needles, they also have, all the tree has this kind of aroma or this etheric smell of it. So I think you can make spruce needle tea, and that will have
Yeah.
some sort of this.
Well,
I
you
think
could
that
make
would be
also,
interesting
you
to
can
to
make a,
distill.
well, and the other thing too is like it takes a huge amount of plant product to distill into essential oil.
Mm-hmm.
And usually if you distill it, you're going to get a distilled water, the smell. And in herbalism, we call it a hydrosol. So we distill the plant into water, right? It
Yeah.
distills into
Mm-hmm.
water, and then you put it in a bottle and it sprays, it smells like the plant. But where essential oils can be dangerous if they're applied directly to the skin when they're not, added to oil or whatever, they can actually cause kidney and liver failure in children and animals. Um, the hydrosols are completely safe. Like you can drink them, you can spray
Yeah.
them,
Great,
uh,
great. Because
and
I
you
would
get that
actually
beautiful
ask you
smell.
some what your comments would be about distilling. And as the spruce gum, I do Dr. Jennifer Daniels turpentine. That's distilled pine tree gum. So not spruce tea, but pine tree, and most likely they're quite close. So
For
if
parasites, right?
that means you, yes, that means you heat it up, and as the traditional, not only Negro cure was for anything, to put distilled turpentine from pine tree gum in sugar, because the parasites long for the sugar, they go there, but the spruce, the gum spirits will kill it. So actually, and I'm actually starting for teeth if I have some sort of infection. I have one teeth that has decalcified somewhat, but I'm keeping guard on it from, and I mix alcohol from technical alcohol and spruce gum and put it on the teeth to brush. It really kills off. I would love to make something with the
Well,
spruce
and
gum
yeah, and that's
or
probably
some
what
other oils or thieves oil I've heard about, and
exactly.
that's essential oils. So
Hmm.
as you say, there's a big warning campaign, for example, about tea tree oil. No, it's poisonous if you take it inside the body. Was in
Well, a
that
lot of
in,
people don't understand that, and they start to lose their stomach lining, and also they start to have pancreatitis, where their pancreas starts to swell up because they're ingesting the tea tree. So it is, it's pretty tough on the body. And this is the other thing,
probably
like,
so strong,
and
right?
it also, if you say, I mean, if you ever looked at a tea tree plant, the little flowers and leaves are kind of smallish, right?
Hmm.
So in order to make like a oil of tea tree, right,
You need too
you're going to
much.
need a lot. So that means
Oh,
that one drop could be equal to 30 cups of
Sure.
plant material, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
would never
It's
ingest more than 1 cup of plant material in hot water a day because it would be toxic. So I
yeah,
think that's kind of like what people have to like think about, when they're ingesting essential oils. But the also thing is that there is toxic turpentine. You don't want to take the, industrial grade of turpentine because you don't know what's in there. And usually they'll add some petrochemicals and other
well,
stuff.
sure.
So
So
you want to make sure,
yeah,
take
exactly.
an oral grade, and like you said, maybe even think about how to make your own with utilizing different, other processes from, like, say, the spruce.
I would guess if I would pulverize or some manner take this spruce gum and have some small quantity of it and make something from it, mix with something else, and I would ingest it, it would actually have the same effect. It would be anti-parasitic from just its usage and not in concentrated form. And I'm fully with you. And there is such a large scare campaign against turpentine, like you will die if you do it. It's the same as iodine. In the military, they will teach you if you take more than 10 drops, it will kill you. You can actually put many milliliters on your skin, and you will see in almost all of the iodine will be absorbed within 24 hours, meaning you lack so gravely of iodine that the body happily takes anything that gets in touch with you. And it's very simple to administer from the skin. So that's kind of most likely most persons would really need iodine or lots of
Right.
other
But you
things.
think about like iodine, or, um, for example, like one of the oldest cultures before Fukushima came along was the Japanese culture, and they
Yeah,
were living to like
see.
125 years old. And they said that there was two nutrient components that
Mm-hmm.
helped them to live to be that age, right? One was a calcium, that mostly they were eating calcium enriched stuff from the ocean. That's why coral calcium became really important, a big, thing. Everyone should take it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's rape the coral reefs and take
Mm-hmm.
all the calcium. But and then the other one was iodine that they would eat because of sea vegetables and
See.
everything that they were eating. They were eating like, 3,000 units of iodine a day.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
in US, people might get, maybe if they're eating iodized salt, maybe like 35 units of iodine.
Yeah.
When we should be like, I take really good iodine supplement because I don't really live near the coast. I don't really have anything that's going to have iodine in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but um, but I take iodine, and I take a really good one, and I take it every day. And it also helps. Iodine has to do with strength, like you being able to have physical strength
Sure, sure,
through
sure,
your
sure.
life. When you lack iodine, you have heating and cooling problems because you're going to have thyroid stuff going on. You may not be
Metabolism.
able to sleep, or you sleep too much. You're too skinny, you can't gain weight, or you gain too much weight. So, the thyroid is like a super important. Also, thyroid can help to regulate, your heart. You can have heart palpitations, you can have panic attacks. They even say that lack of iodine in the thyroid can produce chemicals of hallucination, like not good hallucination. Like you can think like, demons are after
Mhm.
you, and when it's just an actual nutritional deficiency. So yeah, I mean, there are some things that are super, super important, but when you're in the environment and you're eating things, I mean, like a lot of the native people, even here in the desert, the Paiutes and Washoe, they
Mhm.
never got scurvy from lack of vitamin C because they drank things like pine needle tea. They probably ate stuff with pine needles in it. I know that they make pine needle baskets that actually can hold water. So, there's a lot of things that grow in nature that would have had, natural amounts of vitamin C, like, for example, certain kinds of grasses. But you also have to have soil, and you have to have habitat that is helping to put these things back in so other plants can take them, and it's a give and take, which is a whole other process that we're not really participating with in this modern age. But I just wanted to, so anybody out there with a beard, like Par's got it figured out. So if you need some natural bee tending, beard, you need some natural beard tending, you know, par is probably the one you want to shoot some emails to.
Beard wax. There are lots of videos on YouTube. It's making beard wax. You can check it. But this thing about mixing in spruce gum is quite much more easier because the stickiness will come naturally. And this, I started to grow used to this smell so much, and it feels also a mood shifter upwards. So I'm starting to become extremely happy about it. So that's my advice. That would be my thing, to try to find a spruce or a tree with some sap or gum from it, and try to mix it in, see if it's for you.
Yeah, no, so that we're going to end for today, but we're going to have more conversations in the future because I am a little bit more stable and I have a little bit more, you know, get back up on the horse here and get more conversations out. So, and hopefully we'll have some collabs, but this is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes for Think Collaborative YouTube channel. And also I'm going to have Par say your name, say your whole name.
Per Torbjörn Henriksson.
Okay, so I'm terrible at language, but I think it's out of respect, you know, he gets to, you know, we want to have his name involved
Well,
because
I have this funny story. I told it in one of our earliest recordings, but in America, so pear is kind of we say pear in our language, but it's very close to pear, the fruit you eat it. So in the English context, it's easy to be child and get ridiculed for something. They can make fun of your name. So
they call you a pear.
So that's why I go by Par, because I have a special Swedish spelling of my name with the A with 2 dots above it. That's a vowel combination sound. So I take the dots away, and that's Par. So the most close pronunciation is actually a pair of socks. So that would be quite close. But
Oh my gosh.
in studying sounds, no one can say the Swedish U. That's you, and any English speaker will have the sound pronounced to the sound reverberating too far, too up front in the cavity here of the oral cavity, whereas the Swedish sound is naturally quite far back. So if you can imagine or make variation of try to elaborate with the sound of U, it should be far back. And it's so when you listen to another language, it's kind of it's a big interesting situation to study and really open your senses. Listen to another language alphabet, try to repeat it as close as you can, and you will really feel like 7 years old and sitting in school from the beginning. But that's the critical, important step into another culture.
All right.
All
Anyway,
right.
it's been fun. I haven't seen
Thanks.
Par in a while, so we've been texting, but we haven't been able to see each other or talk to each other. So it's all good. So anyway, we're going to end it. I'm ending the record, and let me do that.